Welcome to Morning Infusion with Dr. V, where we are intentional about connecting you with leaders that have overcome so that you know that the possibilities are endless. It's Dr. V here, where our coaching program teaches nurses to work from their computers anywhere around the world, making money and owning their own time. Our featured guest today is Latika McLeod. Tika, a Goldsboro, North Carolina native. I just went to Goldsboro, as a matter of fact, not too long ago. It was this restaurant that was really good, like a farm to
Huh.
table restaurant. It was really good.
Yes. I know
It's
what you're
now
talking about.
you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
Mhm.
Is now serving as a clinical supervisor for a family medicine center in Harrisburg that is under the umbrella of one of the largest healthcare systems in the state of North Carolina. Her background is in primary care, shows that she has a heart for serving others. She provides nursing care from newborn to geriatrics. As a leader in this role, it allows her to shape how her customers view of healthcare professionals, and she does not take the responsibility lightly. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So now I want to first wish you
Thank you.
a happy birthday. Happy birthday, because your birthday
Thank
was
you.
on Friday.
Thank
She
you.
said she spent the entire weekend just celebrating. So happy birthday. So everybody
Yes.
drop in the chat to wish her a happy birthday. So now,
Thank you.
what is the primary reasoning for you to become a nurse?
Wow. So as a child, um, my cousin and I, who is also a nurse now, we were the nurses for my grandmother.
Hmm.
She always called us her nurses, and we just kind of thrived on doing things for her, whether it was rubbing her feet with alcohol, rubbing alcohol, or going out into her garden getting pansy to put in a paper towel to put in the back of her head, her bonnet for a headache. Those were things that we just did for our grandmother, and so she called us her little nurses. And so that is something that my cousin and I always said that we would be growing up. And that is something we did. My cousin and I actually went to nursing school together and we became nurses. And so it definitely wasn't what I started out as, but it's what we did later on in life. My goal was always to be a nurse. I actually started out in the United States Army as a medical lab tech and kind of follow the footsteps of my big sister. But I ended up, my goal was to one day be a nurse. And so by the time I was 30, I became a nurse.
I love it. I love it. I love it. You know, one of the things that I do for my grandchildren is I try to speak life into them. And so one of the things that I do, because my grandson, he would always be upset about going to school. And so I try to start his day off and I said, "What is your name?" And he would tell me his name, Taylor. And I would say, "No, it's Dr. Taylor." And he said, "Okay." So the other
Mm.
day we were talking and he said, I said, I said, "Is your name Dr. Taylor?" And he said, "No." He said, "Grayson," which is his little brother. He said, "Grayson's name is Dr. Grayson." He said, "I'm going to be a firefighter." I was like, "Okay, boy. Okay." He
Well,
said,
he knew he needed to decide.
I was like, "Okay, all right. You're going to be a firefighter, young man." So, you went
Right.
into college health. Now, what made you go into this non-traditional pathway of nursing?
So college health kind of found me. I
Uh,
definitely was not aware of this field going into nursing. Um, Fortunately, I had nurse leaders that kind of thrusted me into my destiny, I guess you would say, just from my very first role as a nurse. My leadership just saw my own leadership capabilities, and so they kind of always pushed me through the ranks. And this opportunity presented itself for me to be a nurse leader in college health. And so I ended up there uh, over 7 years ago, and it just sucked me in. Being on a college campus, it just inspires you. There are so many layers to being on a college campus, and mostly what kept me in college health is that it allowed me to be on the beginning or be at the beginning of teaching students who had never navigated the healthcare system separate from their parents, it kind of allowed me to help them navigate the healthcare system properly. And I had the opportunity to kind of shape the way they see healthcare professionals. And so I always, taught my staff that I led to, hey, make sure that your first impression is a lasting impression, because these students aren't necessarily coming here every visit for, you know, an office visit. Sometimes they're coming here because they've never had a cold or they never had the flu outside of being away. They never had that experience away from home. So sometimes they just need to come here and be told that, hey, this is something you can do on your own. You're going to be okay. Sometimes they just need a mom hug. So those kind of experiences within college health really kept me in college health. And it's something that was really a part of what I enjoyed the most. Really pushed me to be a better nurse, I feel.
I think it's important what you said about, really, really helping them understand the healthcare system, because the reality is that, like, people would come in, you love pediatrics, right? But, these moms sometimes would come in and they would say, well, I say, well, why didn't you give your child some Tylenol, if your child had a
Hmm.
fever? And some of them
Hmm.
may not have had the Tylenol, and that I do understand.
Right.
But some of
Mhm.
them, they would be like, "Well, you wouldn't have believed me." And I'd be like, "I'm gonna believe you. I just, you need
Right.
to give your child Tylenol before your child hits this hospital, right? You have to
Absolutely.
understand that it is very important that you don't have a child where the temperature is so high." And I think sometimes not understanding what the expectation is, because the
Right.
expectation is that you on your own do the things that you can do, and then we will be the extension of what you can't do, right? And so
Absolutely.
it's really, really, I like what you said about that, because it's something I never
Mhm.
really thought about,
Mhm.
within that realm, right, of
Mhm.
healthcare, and understanding that, kids are kids, right? I mean, I didn't know you gave
Mhm.
Tylenol for a fever when I first became a nurse.
Right.
I was clueless, okay? I was
Yeah.
clueless, hot
Yeah.
holy mess,
Yeah.
and helping to understand that is huge, huge, huge. Now,
Uh-huh.
you were raised as a PK, aka
Uh-huh.
preacher's kid. What are some of the
Mhm.
advantages and disadvantages of being raised as a preacher's kid?
Wow. So that's a loaded question, because I feel like the advantages and the disadvantages kind of are intertwined. Um, um,
Like, you're in the spotlight, but you're in the spotlight.
yes, yes. And I feel like the advantages were and still are that, people um, view you as very kind, and, oh, she's just a kind person, and, she's just not going to do certain things. And, um, but on the flip side of that, I feel like I've been challenged just in certain situations where um, I have to kind of step back out of uh, certain instances and kind of not necessarily count to 10, but count to 10. Like, okay, Tika. And I'm literally talking to myself with a smile on my face, like, you're going to have to go in here and explain to someone that this is how we have to do this procedure or whatever, and you have to do it in a way that your light still shines. And so I think being a preacher's kid, and once people realize that about me, once they realize the way I was raised and my beliefs, I think the people who kind of live their life being passive aggressive, I think they try to take advantage of that. And so I have definitely learned, because being a preacher's kid, it definitely it's ingrained in me. It's my foundation. I don't just have that as a title; I live it. It is. I am a preacher's kid, but I'm also, I'm a
Yeah.
Christian, and so I think that people just try you, and they think that being a Christian just means that you can they can kind of run over you. But I have had to learn to do things in ways that people understand that, hey, I'm a Christian, but I still have a voice and I need to be heard. And I can be heard in a way that is still very professional and in a way that we all can still work together and we can all do it in a loving and peaceful way.
I think it's important that people understand, and I'm not a preacher's kid, so I'm over here talking from inexperienced sidebar, okay?
Uh-huh.
But I think that once you become a nurse, right? So you're the representation of nurses, right?
Hmm.
And that representation gives you the ability to be able to, I think, as a preacher's kid, having that representation and having to represent your parents or represent the church in a certain way, it
Hmm.
gives you the
Hmm.
ability to be able to understand how to do that as you grow up. Because
Yes.
I was one of those people who used to think that just because you were a preacher's kid that you had this certain, that you should show up in a
Yeah.
certain way. And the reality is that you
Yeah.
don't, that you are human. And Sarah Jakes, I like Sarah Jakes,
Absolutely.
how she said the other day, she
Yes.
was talking about she said, I'm the kid that did a DMX tribute the other day. She said, that's just, she said, I'm just between
That is
those two
me.
worlds.
That is me. That is me. I am, and I definitely fit that mold. I have adult children, and that is me. They keep me hip to the latest hip hop, and I don't, I definitely, I'm a discerner. So if I feel like something isn't right, if I should be doing something, then I hear, and I obey. But I definitely live my life and I don't put myself in a box. And I encourage other people not to put themselves in the box that certain people professionally and personally will try to put Christians in. So that is, I do, I admire Sarah Jakes Robert as well. I admire her for that.
I can definitely relate. I mean, I grew up in the church. I didn't grow up as a preacher's kid, but I did grow up
No,
in the church.
no.
And and wearing dresses all the time because that's what we did because we were Pentecostal holiness, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I was just like, look, hey.
You
And
might as
I
well have been a PK.
do
You might as well have been. That's a whole nother PK. I mean, really.
I'm glad that you said that. I
Yeah.
feel better now. I feel
Yeah.
better. So now, how did growing up as a preacher's kid affect your personal life and your professional life?
So just it just had its effects in a way that um again, that is my foundation, my values and my beliefs, professionally and personally. I see things differently. Especially professionally, when things look grim. Last year, obviously with the pandemic, things look grim. As a nurse leader, it was hard to keep my staff motivated, even at a time where inside I was not that motivated. Inside, I wanted to complain, and I was tired. But I think because of who I serve, and because I don't necessarily see with my natural eyes. I don't see things, naturally all the time. I think my faith, allowed me to see the bigger picture. And so that's how professionally I was able to motivate my staff and say, hey, I know what it looks like, but think about the big picture. Think about what this will look like, when we get beyond it, because there is another side to this. There is another side to this. And so definitely, being raised as a preacher's kid and, getting that fed into my spirit, you know,
Hmm.
um, that is my foundation. I don't see things with my natural eyes. And so I definitely did not look at the way things were going and, still the way things still are because, coronavirus is still a thing. I just see beyond this. I know that things will not always be this way. And so I talk to my children, my family about it. And I also, in a professional manner, explain to others that, hey, we have to see things beyond what we see right now, meaning we still have to be safe. Um, yes, it's difficult to socially distance, wear your mask, do all the things that we have to do now, be under the restrictions. But hey, a few months from now, we're going to all be vaccinated, hopefully, or the majority of us will be vaccinated, and we can do some things that we have not been able to do together for a long time. As you and I spoke about, I'm vaccinated. I was able this past weekend to celebrate my birthday with family members and friends, and it felt so good to do that. I was able to get some hugs, and I got chills when I was able to hug some of my family and friends. I mean, and I paid attention to that. I think you and I were just talking about being intentional. I was very intentional about the hugs that I was given, and I literally would stop and I felt chills when I hugged some of my family and friends, because I have not been able to do that in a while. So
I love what you said, because you are present in the moment, right? And that's
mhm,
one of the things. I just did a keynote in Delaware, and Professor Deladonna, and one of the things that I taught about is being intentional and being
mhm,
present in the moment, and
yes,
understanding what the gravity of the moment is, right?
yes,
Because you don't get that moment again.
no,
That's that one moment, and you don't get it
yes,
again. And understanding what we have went through, and as well walking in that faith. Like, I don't understand. I honestly, I don't get how people live without it. Like, oh,
I have said that so many times. I listen, last year, watching what was going on in the world, I said 100 times, I'm so thankful that I have hope and a future. Like I said, Jeremiah 29:11 so many times. I thank
mhm.
God, because I mean, I can't live any other way. I don't see how. Am I perfect? No,
No,
but I
I'm
am.
not for you, for me. Okay.
No, but I'm not, and I'm not. I'm not. I'm not perfect, but I am intentional. And if I mess up, which I do, um, I mess up in front of people, and I'm intentional about that too, because I don't want people living their life based upon what they see on my social media page, or based upon what they see from 8 to 5. I want people to understand that Tika is human, and what you see, it took work. And I don't want you to think that things are rosy. It's hard work, and it took some tears to get to where I am. So don't wish for what you see that Tika has,
That's right.
because Tika, it's not always roses.
And it
And you
hasn't
have to,
been. And I think that
no,
that transparency is huge,
yes, yes,
because a lot of people, what they do is they try to downplay that, right? They try to
yes,
downplay that. Well, I'm perfect, or this
uh,
is not. No, no, don't
no,
downplay that. I
no,
went through some struggles. I mean, there
yes,
were a couple times that I was like, wait a minute, what you doing, Viola?
yes,
What you doing?
yes, yes, so true.
I mean, hanging out with folks that were crazy, and
Same.
I was attracted, because I'm a firm believer that you attract who you are. I'm a
Yes,
firm believer. If you are a certain way, if you keep attracting these folks that's broken, if you keep attracting folks that's not doing you any good, be clear that you are attracting who you are. So in order for you
that
not
is
to
true.
attract that person or those people, then you have to change who you are. I don't attract people
Absolutely.
who sit around and talk about other people. I ain't got
No,
time for that.
no,
Do not.
absolutely not. No,
We're gonna
no,
be
because
talking
it's
about
not taking
ideas.
any. Right. That is so true.
Just like before we were on this call, and we'll give y'all a preview later. But just like
Yes.
before we were on this call, we were talking about ideas of how to
Right.
change people, how to affect lives, how to
Absolutely.
impact lives. That's what we're gonna be doing.
Yes.
We're gonna be talking
That's
about
right.
folks. So don't
That's
worry
right.
about you whenever you come around us. We ain't gonna be talking about you. I mean, unless you done
That's
done
right.
something, we'll talk about it for a hot second, then we're gonna move on, okay? Because ain't nobody got time. So
No.
now your father passed away, and when we talked, you said that you had to have time to heal. What were some of the things that you did to heal from his passing?
Wow. So the things that I did to heal from my dad's passing, honestly, Dr. Pierce, is I just allowed myself to heal. Um, I think before it happened, I had no idea what losing a parent really meant. Um, and I tell people this all the time. That was literally the hardest thing I have ever experienced. And I don't think anything will ever affect me that way. We were literally in the hospital room watching my dad transition from this world into heaven. I know he's in heaven. And so I just allowed myself to grieve. And it wasn't the grief process is definitely a thing, but everyone goes through that process in their own time. And
Mhm.
so I allowed myself to take the time to go through that process. And it changed me so much. It changed me. It changed who I am. And definitely I think it changed me for the better, if that's the thing. It just changed me. I think I grew up. I was my dad's, not only was I his child when he was ill, but I was his nurse. He stayed at my house. And so that's difficult. There's so many layers to that. Like that's a whole conversation, trying to be the child and grieve through that process. And also knowing what's going on with the process of him being ill and being the nurse and being like realistic and trying to get out of that. That's a whole another space because
Right.
it's so many layers to that, like trying to get out of your head with the daughter, the nurse, and when do you separate the two.
Mm,
But just allowing myself to grieve, and just talking to others was so freeing. When I saw others going through what I was going through, just being able to kind of relate and tell them, hey, I went through this and this is how it helped me. And also recognizing that even though my dad is not here, he is very much present in my life. He taught me so much. I am so much like my dad, and that gives me so much joy. Everyone recognizes it, and that gives me joy because, and I tell people this all the time. I'm like, even though he's not here physically, I have no regrets. We were close. I was closer to my dad as an adult than I was growing up, but because we were so much alike, um, I have so many memories here, and just he taught me how to do things that I can't get from a book or from a professor. He taught me how to be handy, and my husband will tell you that he tells everyone, and it's almost embarrassing sometimes. He's like, Tika's more handy than I am. Tika can fix a toilet. She can build a shelf. She can do anything in this house better than me. And my dad taught me that, and I'm very blessed by that. And he was a man of God. He loved the Lord, and I questioned that so much when I was going through the grief process. And I feel like there's still some times where I kind of like, Lord, I would have loved for my dad to have seen my son graduate high school, but then I also know that no matter when my dad would have left this earth, it would have been difficult because he was such a great person. And so he went when it was time. And
and I
so I
think
hope that
that
answers the question.
it does, it does. And I think that really, really giving that space for that grief is huge, because
Hmm.
when my dad died, I really had to give that time for that space, and I didn't realize that, right? I didn't realize that I needed to take care of me. I couldn't
Hmm.
take care of my husband, I couldn't take care
Hmm.
of my children, I couldn't take
Yes.
care of anybody but me at that
Hmm.
moment.
Hmm.
And that because that is the person, that's one of the people who love you unconditionally,
Yeah.
right? Between your
Yes.
mom and your dad. And so
Yeah.
those things that can definitely um, can definitely struggle.
Yes.
Now, you made the sacrifice to move to Charlotte to be halfway between both your parents. Tell us, you and your husband's parents, tell us
Mhm.
some of the major changes that you have experienced as a result of the move.
Wow. That's a whole that is another conversation too that could take off. So some of the major changes, I left my job that I loved and adored. My friends, um, both professionally and just personally, that was a sacrifice. However, as an adult, we make sacrifices and compromises, and my husband, it kind of ties in back to my dad being sick. When him and I met um, 18 years ago, my dad was sick. My dad had myasthenia gravis, and he had a lot of health issues because of that. And when my husband and I met, probably within a few months of us getting serious, to make a long story short, I always told him that I needed to stay within a certain distance within my parents so that I can kind of help take care of my dad when he had exacerbations. And he was faithful to that. He never, forced me to move far away. We were always within reach. And so within a year of my dad passing, I kind of started saying, I'm open to looking at other places to live. And 2 years passed, 3 years passed, and we never talked about it. And so November of 2018, an opportunity presented itself for my husband. He went to a conference in Vegas, and I believe it was in Vegas, and the opportunity presented itself for him to perhaps, I don't know if it was that time or not. Anywho, I'm not sure, but we just started having a conversation about kind of moving, and he asked me about it, and at the time I wasn't necessarily interested, but said perhaps it would be something that I would think about. In my mind, I was like, he's just kind of throwing that out there. And I don't even know if at that time it was to this area. It was just, if we ever could move, are you interested in moving? And I said, well, yeah, I told you I would. I really wasn't sold on it. I really wasn't. And so fast forward to winter of 2019, or maybe, I don't know, everything last year is a blur, so I could be getting the dates wrong. But we definitely started transitioning, and I was scared. This was new. I've never, outside of being in the military in the mid to late 90s, the majority of my adult life, I had been home around my parents. After my dad transitioned, I had been with around my mom, and that was really important because now my mom was by herself. But at the same time, now my husband's mother, she was by herself because his stepfather had passed uh, up in 2018. And so he started thinking we need to get at the halfway point to both of our mothers. And so I had to sacrifice now. And so that was hard, but I did it. I did it. We transitioned to Charlotte last summer. We are actually coming up on a year of being here, and it has been wonderful. And I had to get out of my own way because I thought in my mind that I was losing something, leaving my family and my friends in Eastern North Carolina. But God has done exceedingly and abundantly more.
And you
And
could have thought.
He has, absolutely. I could not have even fathomed what he's doing in my life. And not to lessen what he did for me in Eastern North Carolina, but I know that the opportunities that I had in Eastern North Carolina were not because of me, but because of who I serve. And so I definitely recognize that where I am today here, and where he's taking me in this area is not because of Latika McLeod, but it's because of who I serve. And I'm thankful for that. But again, I'm here. I did not, I will admit that I kind of came kicking and screaming, kind of a little bit, not physically, but in my mind, I was a little resentful. I was like, okay, well, I'll go. I was kind of like that. And I was a little
Oh,
resentful. I was resentful. I was, and it was unfair to my husband because he knew that it was a sacrifice for me, and he said that he was like, honey, thank you so much for doing this. I know it's hard for you to leave your job. I know you love your job. I know it's hard for you to leave your mom and your friends, but thank you. He was like, thank you for doing this. But I was still inside, I was resentful for a long time. And so I had to get out of my way, because when I did, the Lord started opening doors for me. And it's big. It's big.
I love it. I love
Yes.
it. You and your husband own a food truck.
Whew.
Now, why did you decide to become an entrepreneur, and why the food truck?
Because we're crazy.
Okay, all right. Well then.
So we real quick, we opened up a food truck because of the pandemic. Everything was shutting down. People were losing their jobs. And we didn't necessarily feel like we would lose our jobs, but we saw people that had been, in their profession for 20, 30 years, and they were losing their jobs. And so we had conversations with our children about this. And we noticed that one thing that people did not stop doing, or did not stop doing during the pandemic, was eating. Like everybody was eating. That's, that was the
We ain't gonna
constant.
stop. We ain't gonna stop eating.
Yeah. Everybody was eating. And they were eating out. And so when we moved to Charlotte, we noticed that, on every corner where we would drive, because all you could do was drive, right? You couldn't go in anywhere. We would see like food trucks posted up. And so we were very interested in doing something on our own and showing our kids, who we have an 8-year-old and we have 3 adult children. We were very interested in showing them, hey, you need to have like something that belongs to you. It's great to have, your education and a profession, but you also need to work hard for yourself.
Right.
And we instill that in our children. And so we jumped out there completely for faith. We jumped out there, actually bought our food truck in October, and it took us several months of learning the business to get started. And we're slowly gaining momentum. Had an event actually Saturday, and as an adult, yes, my birthday was Friday, but Friday night into early the wee hours of Saturday morning, we were prepping for our food truck event that we had on Saturday, because I worked hard for the company that I work for Monday through Friday, but we worked just as hard for ourselves all day Saturday. And it was hard. I want to give up sometimes, and I'm not going to lie. Like, I ask myself every time we have an event, what are we doing? Like, but
the consistency. Consistency is what separates all-time greats from one-hit wonders. Period.
Absolutely. Say that. Say it.
Period. So if you're consistent with it, the reality is that it will bring fruit every time.
I love
because that. When, and I tell my son, because he's an online gamer, and I tell him all the time, I said, it's a consistency. Because he was talking about this other guy that was online a whole lot more, but he was not as effective. I said, well, there are people, I said, when Kobe first came in the game, Kobe wasn't effective as other people, right? But he was consistent. He was consistent. He said he was on the court 3 hours in the morning. He was on the court doing the thing, right? And so the reality is that he was consistent. And so it's the consistency that separates. So, hey, it's gonna be phenomenal.
I hope so. I'm seeing it in the spirit, and I feel like, once we really get our feet underneath us, that it's just gonna take off. And we're motivated, and our children see us working at it, and I think that motivates them. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
That's right. That's right.
We want them to see us working hard and being on our grind, and they see it.
Now, where can the audience find you if they want to come have a taste of that food truck in Charlotte?
So we have a website. We are the Sandwich Shack by CT Enterprise LLC. And so they can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we're really simple. So my phone number is listed on those websites as well. So definitely, any of those social media sites, you can kind of find us, and our events are posted on our webpage. And I typically post the link to our webpage on those sites.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So thank you for showing up this morning. We went a little bit over, but I think it was
Absolutely. Thank you for
important.
having me.
We had a good time. So we have a 4-day business challenge on June 8th, 2021. It is free, and we will be teaching you business mindset, wealthy business mindset, strategies to attract your
Wow.
ideal client, speaking as another stream of income, and the power of social media so that you can create multiple streams of income. So you can sign up at V as in Victor, P as in Paul, nursing.com. I ask that you like and share this podcast, and I just thank you for showing up. Just because
Thank
we're
you for having me.
intentional about connecting our audience with leaders such as you, Latika, that have
Thank
overcome,
you for
so that
having me.
you know that the possibilities are limitless. So you have a phenomenal rest of your day.
Thank you.